What we're going to do now is we're going to create a new design. There's just one more design that I want to show you because there's just one or two more things that I want you to see with the Tinkercad UI, just to give you a little bit more tools to create just slightly better objects or just slightly better creations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by dragging a cone and placing a cone onto my work plane. Okay, now I'm going to make this cone a little bit taller. A reason being is because what I'm going to be making now is a ice cream cone. So right now we've got the cone, but the problem is the cone is two things. Firstly, it's the wrong color, but secondly, it's upside down. When you hold an ice cream cone, you hold it with the big side facing up so that it can hold the ice cream. So let's solve those problems one at a time. The first thing we'll do is we'll change the color, and we'll make the color, maybe this brown color. Maybe that brown color looks all right, or maybe this tan color. I think maybe that's a little bit more appropriate. Okay, so there we go. We've got our ice cream cone. Now, what I want to draw your attention to with this are these kind of circles, or these kind of half moon circles with these arrows on either side of them. You see, there's every time you look at an object, there's three of them, or a shape, there's three of them. And what these objects relate to is the axis on which these objects can rotate. So you can see that we can rotate it by a specific number of degrees. We can rotate it if we want to. You just got to be careful with it. You can rotate it by, oh no, why is it not working? Okay, for some reason I can't seem to turn it that way around, but if that does happen to you, just keep playing around with it and see if you can just find a way to get it. But you see, I can rotate it 90 degrees, and if I want to, I can rotate it 180 degrees to make it facing straight up. And let's try and get it as close to 180 as possible. If you can't get 180, it's fine. Anything close to that is fine. And there we go. Now we've got something that looks a little bit more like an ice cream cone. And you see, I've got that same, I can turn it on all axes. So right now, this is a quite symmetrical shape, which means that if you cut it in half, the two objects are going to be quite equal. So for that reason, that's not that many axes that we can turn on. But don't worry about that if that's confusing. So as you can see here, if I rotate it on this side, if you look very carefully, the object is turning, but it's not really changing at all, because turning in that direction doesn't change the object. Whereas if I brought in something like a roof and I tried to rotate it, you'd see very clearly that it's turning as I turn it. And you can see over here, I can also change this axis so that I can flip it more like that way. So I can flip it more this ways if I wanted to. You see that you can really get any angle that you want with these shapes that you need. So let's try now that we've got this cone. In fact, I'm going to make this cone a little bit shorter, because now that I see it in this orientation, I'm not sure it's the right proportions, but I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my ice cream. So I think to start off with, maybe I'll just bring in a sphere and we'll see how that looks. And if it doesn't work, we'll change it for a half sphere. So I'm just going to bring this object now. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You have to try and find a good way to get this object aligned with the cone. So you can try different perspectives, and it just takes a little bit of trial and error. There are other ways to do it, but we won't focus on those today. We're just going to focus on trying to get it just through trial and error a little bit. So there we go. We've got it more or less. It doesn't have to be perfect. No ice cream is. And now when we've got that in place, what we're going to do is we're going to raise this object up, because right now, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the ice cream isn't exactly on the right level. Okay, it's on the ground. And what we want is for it to sit on top of the cone. So the way that we do that is by grabbing this little arrow over here, this black arrow that sits atop the shape, and just clicking and dragging it up to raise the ice cream up into position. And there we go. Now our ice cream is sitting in our cone, looking good, looking good. And if you don't like the position of it, now that it's more or less in the correct place, you can move it around a little bit by zooming in and just finding a good angle to grab and move it in. So now that we've got that done, why don't we see if we can create another scoop for the ice cream? So let's bring in another flavor. Actually, you know what? Let's change this flavor. Let's make it a flavor, whatever your favorite flavor is. I think I'm gonna go for honeycomb flavor, which is my favorite. And then let's bring in this one over here. And maybe what's my other favorite? maybe just plain vanilla. So let's put that in the center there. Let's try find it more or less. I think that's looking good. See, the more that you practice it, the better you'll get with it. And then let's click on drag on that little arrow and move it up. And there we go. We've got more or less our ice cream on our ice cream cone, our nice cream cone. So now what we'll do is we'll change this name to your name. So I'm going to make it Luke. I'm going to call it nice cream cone. You can call it an ice cream cone. I'm going to call it a nice cream cone because I think it's quite nice. And there we go. Now, if you want to, you can play around with this. I'd say if you do, I'm not going to include it in this lesson right now, but if you want to, you can bring in a rectangular box and you could even make a flake for your ice cream. I think, actually, you know what? Let me just do it now. I've got a little bit of time. Let me just do it now. I'll make this a little bit taller and I'll change its color and see if we can find a brown color. And I'll raise it up a little bit because I think over here is where it's going to be most in position. So I'll raise it up here and then just make sure I'm in alignment. That's good enough. And now I'll click on the object and I'll see if I can find the way that I want to rotate it. See, those arrows point in the way that you want to rotate the object. So we'll just click and drag on those arrows and we'll just try and turn it. It's not letting me turn it now. Eek. Oh, it's not letting me turn it. Why? Okay. Well, that's fine. Let me try it from the other side. Sometimes it doesn't work, which is annoying. There we go. Now it's working. So you just got to, if it doesn't work, just readjust your camera and then just see if it works. I'm lower it a little bit. And there we go. Now we've got an ice cream cone with a nice flake in it. A nice ice cream cone. An ice cream cone. Okay. So that's where I'm going to leave things today. What I will say is if you want to go on with more stuff to play around with, then why don't you try and use your imagination and just think of something that you might want to try and create and see if you can bring in basic objects to make it happen. Remember, you have all of the tools necessary now to be able to make pretty much anything you want. All it's going to take is just a little bit of tinkering around and practice to get it right. So remember, what we've learned today is that you can place objects, you can make those objects taller, you can make those objects wider, or with a greater depth and length. You can also rotate those objects if you want to, and you can move those objects up and down in the plane if you need to be able to do anything. So that's it for today. I'm going to leave things here. We'll go into a few more details in the next lesson. We'll take a look at making something else. I'm going to leave things here though. Thank you so much for coming to class and for coming to the lesson, and I hope you're taking good care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you again soon.